Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Stories with No Words. I'm your host, Ocean Johnson, and I am joined this week by the wonderful Emma Gibson, live in Queen's Radio in the Queen's University Students' Union building. God, that took me forever to get ready and get done with, but not going to lie to anyone listening tonight, to whoever you are. Robin, I know you've been listening in and asked what was playing beforehand, and you know what? I'm not going to tell you. This week on the show, we've got a number of tracks listed up, and Emma has brought in two wonderful pieces that she wants to share with us as well from games she has been playing recently. Firstly, though, Emma, introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us what your background is, I suppose, with video games in general.
Oh, Lord, introduce myself. Okay. Hiya, I'm Emma Gibson. I only actually started gaming during lockdown, which is really sad and really recent, but lockdown started and I was like, a lot of my friends are computer science students and they all started gaming and they were like, oh, you should come and game with us, give us like a way to talk to you, a time to see you. And then it was a spiral from there.
Yeah, for sure. I know specifically a lot of people I've been talking to recently have said that games have really been a thing that they've gotten into over lockdown as well. I think there was a piece or a paper that was published recently about mental health and video games, about how a lot of people use it as a way of communicating with friends throughout lockdown. So I think a lot of people can resonate with that as well. But, you know, what is it, I suppose, you know, you brought in two tracks today and we'll get on to one of them very shortly after this next track we're about to play. But what is it about games music that you think is so, I suppose, appealing in a sense as opposed to just regular music?
Well, for anyone that doesn't know me and doesn't know who I am, I'm a music student. So obviously the music of everything is quite important to me. It's something that like my attention is drawn to. But it's just film music and like gaming music especially takes it to a new level of just it properly causes immersion with games. Like, I don't know, just adding the music into a game, it properly like it sets the scene, it supports what's going on screen, and it really like just draws you into the whole experience. Because if you play like games with the soundtrack muted or like with the sound off on your TV, if you're being too loud at night or whatever, it's just not the same experience at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's always nice to, I suppose, bring back the conversation. And obviously you've talked about the immersion of video games with music, and the next track we're going to play actually came out from an indie game in 2017. For those who know Celeste will know that it was a very popular game at the time. I believe it was nominated for Game of the Year at that stage as well, but it came out with this fantastic score, all done by one person, and I really want to play one piece of music just so you can get a feel of that now. back now after that wonderful tune from Celeste, obviously nominated for Game of the Year back in 2017. Now, you and I were talking, Emma, just a bit before the show about the games you had picked, or I suppose the soundtracks you picked for this week, and Thomas Was Alone was one of them, which I, of course, introduced you way back in Christmas when you had COVID during Christmas, which was rough to begin with. And I don't know if the game itself helped in any way, shape, or form, because it seems to be a tough bit of contention. Have you finished it?
Okay, so for a little bit of context for anybody listening, Odin recommended this game to me and I was like, is it a difficult game? Because I had COVID, I was tired, I wasn't feeling great, and Odin told me that it's like a game for kids, and I got halfway through it and it's like, it's got chapters and then level within the chapters, and there's 10 chapters, and I started chapter 5 and I got stuck in chapter 5.1 and I haven't progressed since.
Haven't gotten anywhere else through it.
I haven't gone any further.
Well, I think we were talking halfway through that last song where you didn't even realize there was a way you could select different levels to go to.
I didn't know this. I just got stuck on a level and then thought that was me stuck until I could complete the level.
Well, now you know. Maybe you'll go back to it. Probably not, let's be honest. I don't think you're going back to it anytime soon.
No, I'll go back to it at some point when I've rebuilt my self-esteem.
Well, tell us a little bit about the piece you picked this week. Obviously, what is it you liked about it when you heard it?
Yeah, so the piece I've picked is called Time for Change. It's written by David Hounsend, I think it's pronounced. And it's a really nice piece. It's really relaxing, but it's like, it's not dull relaxing. Like it's calming, but it's got a little bit of a beat to it. It's got a little bit of like a, it's not like dragging. It's not dull, but it's really relaxing, and I really like listening to it.
Well, let's give it a listen anyways. And the viewers who have obviously been sending in their massive praise for the show already can decide whether it is something to be either lauded or loved. So we'll play that for you now. A Time for Change from Thomas Was Alone. You know that track's actually not that bad, to be honest. I mean, I listened to a little bit of it at the beginning when you sent it to me yesterday.
Yeah.
It does have a kind of a more of a relaxed energy about it. I know you were talking to me a little bit during the song playing. It has this sort of, it begins very sort of soft and quiet and whatnot, and it's kind of this relaxing track, and then it kind of gets a bit more inspirational, a bit more uplifting afterwards.
Yeah, it kind of builds as the track goes and like adds more layers to it, which I really like. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I suppose if you ever get back to Thomas Was Alone, you'll know that is probably the ending goal of it. But yeah, no, we've actually been, I don't know, it's funny enough, the first week I did this, we didn't have many indie game soundtracks on it, which is it's interesting in the sense because I think there's a really good conversation surrounding, you know, when you're getting a game soundtrack, a lot of the stuff for, say, major publishers, say your Call of Duty or Halo, all these other big games, the soundtracks will be very, you know, you'll know what to expect. Whereas with indie games, it's kind of interesting in the sense that you can have some game about something completely random. I think a game I was telling you about recently was called My Friend Pedro, which is about, quite literally, it's a guy taking down gang mob bosses with 2 pistols and a friend who's a banana called Pedro. And, you know, what is the soundtrack to that? Who knows? Obviously, there has to be something about that. And, you know, the stuff we've played already, like, you know, Thomas Was Alone is about shapes.
Yeah, it's about like squares and rectangles. About
shapes. And it was very well acclaimed at the time. And I believe it obviously won a number of awards at the time. I think I remember reading somewhere that the Mike Bithell, the guy who created the game, is very annoyed that he's the guy known for the game about shapes. And he makes anything else afterwards. And that's all that people really realize it for. But I think the indie game soundtrack scene is always really interesting, and obviously we're going to move on now to one of our favorite indie games that we both know and love, which is of course Cuphead. Yeah. Give me a little sense about, because obviously when I mentioned Cuphead to you first, I was kind of surprised that out of all the games, Cuphead would have been the one that you kind of had heard of. What was it about Cuphead, I suppose, that really kind of interested you?
Yeah, because I only started playing Xbox like a year ago now. Because I mean, I've got an Xbox now, but I didn't have one growing up. I never had one until I moved in with my flatmates last year. And they just happened, I don't know why, but they had decided they were going to replay Cuphead and they were going to go the whole way through the game and play it together, because you can do it single player or multiplayer. And whenever I first moved into the house, I kind of knew them. I kind of didn't know them quite as well as I probably should for someone I lived with. But every morning they would get up and they'd go downstairs and they'd play Cuphead. And every morning I'd wait until I hear them go downstairs, and then I'd follow them downstairs and I'd go and sit in the living room with them and watch them play Cuphead. And then I watched them play like the whole game, and then after they finished, I was like, "Oh, here, like, can I have a turn? Like, can I try and play it?" It's a hard game. That was my first Xbox game, and it's a hard game to start with.
I think it's probably at least one of the games as well that both of us really like, but we've actually never finished.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like, even when I look at the soundtrack, because the soundtrack is so good, first of all, to begin with.
Incredible.
It's got, like, obviously the amazing jazz and everything, but there's completely different areas afterwards that veer off into different sort of genres and whatnot, which I have never seen, because I've just, I've heard them on the soundtrack, but bar that, it's all been just like, oh, I wonder what this is like. And I see screenshots from later on in the games, like, I've just never seen that. Probably never going to see it, knowing my luck with that game, but
I know, like aisle 1 and aisle 2, I like hear the soundtracks and I'm like, oh, that's that level, I know what's going on. Aisle 3 comes along and I'm like, what's going on?
No, it never existed. But saying that, one of our favorite songs from the game, I mean, at least I know mine in particular, is Floral Fury, which is an aisle 1 track that I think everyone will know if they've ever played or even seen a bit about Cuphead. So I'm going to play that here now. Get ready to get your jam on. This is a real classic one right here. So, as anyone who watches the playback of this when we have the video will know that Emma and I were vigorously dancing to this song throughout the entirety of it playing.
And unapologetically dancing.
Of course, yeah, no. If we're in public, I will dance to this in the street if I hear it playing.
Sure, I saw you earlier and just did the dance to this song actually as a greeting.
Yeah, I mean, well-known greeting at this stage, to be honest. I know it as a sign now that whenever I see you, I'm like, oh yeah, she's just saying hi.
Yeah.
I always, whenever I listen to these songs, I'm always like, oh, this really makes me want to get back into playing piano or playing, like, I want to learn like the trumpet or something. Then I realize if I wanted to play it on piano, I have to dislocate my shoulders or something because it is insane how quick and fast that stuff goes.
Oh, it's crazy. It always reminds me of how good like jazz music is. Like I always forget, and then I hear like this soundtrack, and I'm like, that's just
There's really I remember when I was looking up stuff for this, I remember I found a couple of, because they've done a couple of in-house video sessions where they're recording for the soundtrack.
Yeah.
And Floral Fury is one of them, and it's so cool to watch, like just people in a room. I think maybe more so now because of COVID. We don't. At least I know now with a lot of game soundtracks, they're doing loads of stuff over Zoom, which first of all sounds horrible to be a part of and trying to play along with people over Zoom. But then you see the stuff beforehand, you're like, oh, can we go back to this, please? And we were talking just there a little bit before we started, like they were playing Cuphead soundtrack live in London there at the weekend, and I just remember seeing it. I was like, I would have dropped all my life savings on a ticket over to London if I knew that this was a thing and that I could have played. They also had, of course, Ori and the Will-O-the-Wisps. I'm not sure if it was a British affair that they had those two playing, because I'm not sure about. I don't think Cuphead's composer is from the UK, but I know for a fact that Gareth Coker, who's Ori's composer, is from there. But I mean, if you want to search that up while I'm still talking about this, that'd be great. But the main thing is, it's really cool whenever you see that sort of stuff played live. It doesn't compare to any stuff. And I think one of the weeks I'm gonna have to get on some of the representatives. No, he's not from the UK.
He's not from the UK.
Right, so
he is Canadian.
Canadian. Well, that's just pure random that they both of them playing, to be honest.
Yeah. It's really strange that that's ended up happening.
But yeah, I'm gonna stick with the jazz theme for a little bit though, because one of the tracks that I hadn't initially had queued up for this week, I now kind of want to play, which is from Deathloop. It's Pitch Black, and they did a very interesting format with the music they were doing. So they kind of made it jazzy and groovy, but also kind of mixed in with tones of James Bond. So that's right down my alley already. So I'm gonna play that now. Pitch Black from Deathloop.
Looking for a sign on the mind or a cycle time. Buried in the memory, hiding deep. Wolf is at your feet, and suddenly caught in the light, half alive under watchful eyes. For fun, youth is always on the run, rising with the same sun, face to face, loaded gun. Drink cakes to midnight, who's it gonna be?
Like we were just talking through the break. We're actually going to switch vibe completely on soundtracks now, because we're gone from sort of heavy bass jazz and big band all the way over to more relaxed piano inspired pieces, and this with Stardew Valley. Now, funnily enough, I have only ever played Stardew Valley once, and it was for a total of 30 minutes, and I think I fell out with a load of my friends over it, because I think initially when you get spawned your little farmhouse or whatever, I stole all their furniture and hid it in a hid it in a cave. So when one of them went out and did whatever task, being a helpful human being, they came back and there was nothing in their house.
Do you know what? You can't play multiplayer Stardew Valley without pissing off whoever you play with. I remember I once got all of my random furniture I didn't want and just blocked my friend from getting into his room, and then he got into my bed instead, because he was like, well, screw you, I'm going to get into your bed. So then I blocked him in my bed so he couldn't get back out.
Oh, so you've played it a good bit then, have you?
I have played over 100 hours of Stardew Valley.
Excuse me?
And it was the first game I bought whenever I started gaming. But yeah, I've played quite a lot of Stardew Valley.
It's not an incredibly expensive game. I think it only is about like £15 or something
yeah,
like that.
I think
as
it was
well.
like 15, 20 quid. It was pretty cheap.
Yeah. And so what was it then about this week? You're obviously thinking back on games that you enjoyed and played. What was it about sort of Stardew that you really liked about its, I suppose, its composition?
Yeah, so Stardew Valley, just anytime I hear, because the overture, which is what I brought this week, plays at the start of the game, like as you load it up, just every time I hear it, I'm just filled with like happiness, because I love Stardew Valley, but also like a little bit of like sadness, because it just reminds me of COVID. But the music of Stardew Valley is just beautiful. It's all so nice. I remember there was another song I said to you about. There's only 30 seconds long. So I was like, it's too short to bring on the show, but they have some beautiful little themes for all of their players, like all the characters in the game. But yeah, it's really, really beautiful music, and it's so relaxing.
The main question is, that I have come to believe from anyone who's ever talked about, the only ever time I see about Stardew is when I see people standing it on Twitter or whatnot and talking about like who they ship and all that. who is the go-to Stardew guy or woman for you?
Okay, so my go-to Stardew guy is called Sam, and he's the one in the band. He's the blonde in the band. He's the typically hot guy, and I get so much hate from my friends for going for him, because they all go for Elliot, who's like the motorbike rebel guy, and I'm like, come on. Like, I know my choice is basic, but that's just as basic.
Just remember, everyone, if at the end of the day they're all just pixels on a screen, so get outside, touch some grass, enjoy your life, and do what you want. Ending on that extremely positive note, we're going to go to some really relaxing music from Stardew. We're looking at the overture this week. As Emma obviously mentioned, some of the themes are quite shorter than usual, so this one comes out about 2 minutes. So here's a full little taster of everything you want, and of course afterwards, if you've been hooked in by the riveting discussion we've had about Stardew and about who you ship as a character, then it might be a game you should consider. That was a wonderful piece from Stardew Valley. You may be able to notice that I'm a little bit worse for wear at the moment. That's because Emma has spent the last 2 minutes showing me fan art of this character she had fallen in love with in Stardew, and who I've now learned she is married to.
Yeah, because you can get married to them in the game. So I got married to him, and then he moves into your house with you, and he gets like his whole little area in the house. I'm really selling the game.
I judge this so much, but I did introduce you then to Mass Effect, which is probably that times 20.
Yeah, you did introduce me to Mass Effect, which you can, yeah.
Whilst we're on the topic, then, have you decided in Mass Effect who you ship most? Obviously, your space boyfriend, and that was Caden. For anyone who was who was wondering, that gripping question for anyone.
Here, my space boyfriend is incredible. Don't diss my space boyfriend.
Yeah, he's not in the second game though for much, is he?
Well, he could. Apparently, he comes back in the third game.
Okay.
So, you know.
You're hanging on to that hope.
I'm really hoping. The
bar is here. It leaves for an entire game, comes back.
Well, to be fair, actually no, I was going to give a massive spoiler as what happens between the first and second game. And I was like, no, I'm not spoiling it for anybody listening. But
how kind of you. So next I'm moving on to a little bit more of a track. Now, more of a relaxing track, but in a different sort of style. Those of you who are aware of the game Hotline Miami, it's not as relaxed as you think it'd be. It's a very much a top-down shooter with an intense difficulty, if I could describe it in that way. And it was met with controversy and love at the time it came out, more so the second game, which went completely off the walls. But I thought that the soundtrack itself is really cool because as you imagine an intense action game, you might think of, I suppose, loud rock bombastic stuff, which I want to bring in and play someday because some of the stuff from Doom and all these other games are amazing. But Hotline Miami takes a very different approach in that it's a very neon centric sort of 80s style, so it's got these more relaxed synth like beats going out throughout it. So I thought, what way to wind down the evening before our final track of the evening and listen to something that's a bit more lo-fi, more relaxed, whatnot. So here is a piece from Hotline Miami. Right. Well, that was a nice little relaxer into the next piece that we're going to be looking at. But I mean, honestly, I think the soundtrack in general is pretty much well encapsulated in that last song, because it is literally just loops on loops of just, I suppose, what would be the word? Psychedelic music is what I used to describe that, because it's completely just all over the place in terms of like what you're doing in the game, and then the music is just the complete tonal opposite of just doing nothing exciting. But I mean, yeah, I mean, we've talked a bit about kind of the music this day. Like, what are you playing at the moment? We mentioned Mass Effect a little bit. Is that all you're playing at the moment, or what are you looking at, Emma?
It's not all I'm playing, but it's definitely the thing I'm most obsessively playing at the minute. I'm playing quite a lot of Cuphead still at the minute, because I'm still very stuck on it, and I'm determined that I'm going to complete at some point. I'm dabbling in Thomas Was Alone, because as I mentioned earlier, I didn't realize you could play individual levels. So I restarted the game to show my friend the game, because I thought she might enjoy it. She didn't enjoy it, and now I'm stuck. I can't be bothered to play all the levels to get back to where I know I'm going to get stuck. So I'm playing that a little bit. Toxic trait. Here's my toxic trait for gaming that I want to get back into, because I've not played it for a while. League of Legends.
Oh God, yeah.
For like 3 months, that was all I would play every night, all day. So I played that a bit.
Did you ever end up watching the show that Netflix put out for it?
No, I've never watched it, but I don't know. I've heard good things about it.
Yeah.
But speaking of Netflix shows, the Cuphead show.
Yeah, I mean, we finished that recently, didn't we? So
We
I mean,
did.
yeah, I don't know what to think of it, to be honest, because on the surface, I really enjoy it. And I'm just like, I enjoy seeing Cuphead or any sort of game kind of be made into a show, but I think like it's fun from episode to episode, but it's kind of a bit all over the place as well.
Yeah, I don't know, because we watched it in like 2 sittings, which is really not as bad as it sounds, because their episodes like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
The first 3 episodes were so funny, and I don't know if it's because we then like were watching the rest on a different day and we just weren't hyper or something, but they just weren't as funny. Like, there was a good show still. It's like something you could like stick on while you do the dishes or something. But I don't know, I didn't like. I was a bit disappointed by it. I was a bit more excited.
Yeah, because I had this kind of thing recently where it's like, I don't know if it's the fact that they're shorter episodes that keeps me less engaged. I think they weren't connected either, so that was something that kind of I wasn't too into, because I watched recently as well. I don't know if you've ever seen on Amazon Prime The Boys.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, they released this mini like sort of spin-off series called The Boys Diabolical, which is like 8 animated episodes of like different branching narratives that all connect into the world, and it's great and all that, but I don't know if it's bingeable, those sorts of things, because they're so short, and they're once you start to get a bit invested in one of the stories, it's over. So I don't know if it's maybe something that if you want to watch, you're kind of going to have to do over the course of a bit longer, maybe.
Yeah, I'd say it's like a good, like, while you're doing some housework, like doing your dishes, cleaning your room, stick an episode on. It's good to watch. It's kind of entertaining, but it's not. I wouldn't binge it. We binged it, and it wasn't a good idea.
I'm going to try and do a complete smooth transition onto the next bit and talk a little bit about the song before we go. Are you a fan of outer space, Emma?
I am a very big fan of outer space.
What in particular? What do you think about when you think about going out into the stars? What is it? Is it the mystery? Is it possibly finding some aliens? What is it that you're...
I don't know. I just love like the beauty of it, because my mum, you don't know this, but my mum was an astronomy teacher. So we had like telescopes in our house, and if it was like a clear night, because I lived in the countryside, we'd go out the back and we'd get out the telescope and we'd look at like Jupiter, and we'd look at Saturn's, and we'd see if we could see Saturn's moons, or Saturn's rings and Jupiter's moons. It's just so pretty. Like, every day you look at like the NASA photos, and they're just so pretty and so cool. And then I have an existential crisis because I realize how big the universe is.
Well, what a positive note to end that on. The next track we're going to be playing is from a game called Outer Wilds, which is a fantastically intuitive and completely groundbreaking indie game of the scene. Everyone I talk to about it says this is amazing, you should play it, but doesn't want to tell you anything about it because that would ruin even the smallest part of the experience. It's all about finding your own way to this part and trying to figure out what the main quest actually is. So there is no waypoints, no markers, no anything. You're just given a set of things that you have to do and try and make it way through there. And it also comes with a pretty good soundtrack as well. So I'm going to play one track from that now. I suppose if you're listening, Robin, let us know what you think. Right, so that's actually a really relaxing track. I mean, I had this queued up from ages ago, so I had forgotten what it sounded like, and I was just hoping it was good. So, I mean, it sounded all good, to be honest.
That was a class track. It was so like chill and relaxing.
Yeah. I mean, to move on a little bit, we're going to look at a track later on from, I mean, the PlayStation 5 and Xbox released back in November 2020, if I'm correct. Yeah. And, you know, the major thing about that was the all these release titles that were going to coming out with it. And a huge factor of, I mean, the PlayStation 4 success was the Spider-Man game released by Insomniac Games, and everyone loved that, and so it was kind of inevitable that they would release a spin-off game for Miles Morales, as it was revealed in the end of the game that he also has spider power. So we began to talk about this at the beginning of the song, and you were like, who's this now? And I said, wait, we'll talk about it. So I'm guessing you don't know any of this stuff about Miles Morales or anything.
No, my experience with Spider-Man is I've seen the first Andrew Garfield film, and I've seen all the Tom Holland ones.
Okay, so I mean, Miles hasn't been introduced in any of those yet, because if you watch, I remember Sony did an animated Spider-Man movie a couple of years back, Into the Spider-Verse, which is completely about Miles, who's this Puerto Rican, guy who gets bit by a spider, shock horror Spider-Man story, and I think it's different in the way that it's not a completely new interpretation of the Spider-Man character. Spider-Man's also still alive in that world or whatever. Usually either he takes over or he's working with him. So there was a huge sort of expectation that when this happened that there would be at least an incorporation of this character into the game. And then they came out with this whole game that was literally just dedicated to him, and it's fantastic. It's got great score, great combat, everything about it. And I suppose anyone who's a big fan of superhero soundtracks will be I suppose a little bit knowledgeable of John Paisano, who does also the music for the Daredevil TV show on Netflix. So obviously he's some veteran in that regard, and he also did the music for the previous Spider-Man game and the one that's coming up now, Spider-Man 2. Okay, I have to ask, favorite superhero
of all time?
Yeah. I mean, of the last 10 hours.
That's mean. Oh my days, you really put me on the spot here, Jen. Favorite superhero from Marvel is Black Widow. That's the only one I can think of right now. That's too broad a question. I'll go with Black Widow.
On the spot. Maybe, here's a great way to use the next track segment as an intermission. Maybe during the next track you might think of someone maybe else and we can talk about it.
Give me a bit to think about it.
Get to Google, get to the wikis, check it all out. But here is the next track from Spider-Man Miles Morales called New York's One and Only Spider-Man. after that piece. Now we spent I want to say the whole piece trying to figure out who Emma's favorite superhero was, but as soon as we played the song, she had it in her head who it was. So enlighten us, Emma. Who was it?
My favorite superhero is Quake, who is from the Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show. She has like 3 names, so I'll say 2 of her names because you meet her in season 1, but she doesn't have the name Quake in season 1. She also doesn't have any superpowers in season 1. It's halfway through season 2 she gets her superpowers, and at that time she gets called Daisy Johnson. She's a name change, and then her teammates call her Tremors. And then at the start of season 4, Daisy leaves S.H.I.E.L.D. and she goes bad because her never mind. Spoilers for the end of season 3 nearly happened. But she leaves S.H.I.E.L.D. and she then gets nicknamed by the world Quake because her whole powers is like she can control the vibrations and frequencies of stuff, so she can literally cause earthquakes with her hands. She's class.
And why is she your favorite?
Because she's just class. She's a hacker. She starts off working for good, and she I don't know, kills bad people, but she doesn't really kill bad people. She just kind of like sends them flying into walls, and it's really cool. And then she just has like a full flip, and she's like, "This bad thing happened. I don't care anymore."
Can I just say, she doesn't kill bad people. She just throws them into walls.
Yeah,
that could. They're fine. Minor brain damage, but they're fine.
She can cause avalanches with her hands. That's so cool.
That's the one thing about old superhero stuff that I always find so funny. It's like these superheroes are like, I don't kill you, I'll just give you brain damage.
Yeah, it's like I don't kill you, but I'll do anything but.
It's like Batman's like, oh, I would never take another life, yet he's like actually pounding a guy's skull in at the same time. And even Spider-Man as well, he just like throws people up in the air, webs them, and hopes that they get caught. It's just
also Spider-Man just like leaves people like webbed to like walls and stuff where they're clearly gonna fall at some point because the web doesn't last forever.
Yeah, it's just dissolving, and then Spider-Man's almost like, oh, did I forget something? Oh my god, that one guy.
Here's the crash of the guy falling.
We were talking a little bit beforehand, and the next track we've put up is from Dark Souls 3. Now, I've mentioned tonal shifts already in the show. This is actually the biggest tonal shift, and when you hear the song afterwards, you'll be like, what sort of diversion was this to begin with? Dark Souls, I think you're more of a fan of it than I am. I've played a little bit, and obviously I thought it'd be interesting to talk about it, and you even reminded me that the new game from the Dark Souls series came out in collaboration with George R.R. Martin, Elden Ring, which has been taking the world by storm. It's got a 97 overall review score. I think everyone is kind of already hyping it up for Game of the Year, which is the case with all the Dark Souls games recently, I think, as well. Experiences with Dark Souls, lay them on me. Where'd it happen?
So Dark Souls, I first last year, like during lockdown 2, which was like the end of 2020, some of my friends were playing Dark Souls 3 on their PC, and I was like watching them play it on Discord while I was like doing uni work and stuff. I'd just sit and watch them. And then one of my friends, same friends that got me into Cuphead, they were playing at the same time Dark Souls.
Masochists.
And I was like, that looks really fun. Can I have a go? I am terrible at Dark Souls, but I really, really enjoy it. I don't know why I love it so much, but it's just really fun. Probably because my friend has helped me cheat my way through it. He may have like completed the first big boss for me. He may have gone and got me the best shield or the best sword in the game really early. But it's a really fun game, and I've played it for so many hours and gotten so stuck on it. Yeah.
When Elden Ring was announced, or when it came out, anyways, everyone was buying it. Even people who didn't like Dark Souls were buying it. And I was just like, this is €70. I'm probably gonna if I buy it, I'm not gonna be very good at it, and it's just not gonna be for me. So I had to check my wallet, realize I didn't even have €70 to put into a game like that, and I thought, what have I got that's second best? Well, I had Demon Souls, which is the first ever game I think from the Souls series on my PlayStation 5. I was like, they'd remade it, I'll give it a go, I'll play it. And one thing I noticed about when playing the Dark Souls games or the Soulsborne games was that it's really fun that they have like if you're connected to the internet, you can sometimes see the shadows of other players running around, but you can also have a little like you can leave notes that can be appraised or like hated on. And I've just like seen so many ridiculous notes of like somebody, like the best one I found was like there's a brick wall or something, and there's a note inside of it, it's like walk through fake wall, and it's not. But then the note right next to it and beside it says, this man is a liar. And I'm just like, I love this little sort of stuff. And after like the first boss fight or whatever, there's like a load of notes being like, well done, you did it. And it's like, oh, that's nice. How sad of me to be in my own.
The leaving the notes is great because it really helps me. Whenever you get stuck, like you look in these little notes and it's great. what you didn't talk about is the worst feature. I mean, I hate it. It's probably not the worst feature in the game, but you can invade people. So not if you're online, not only can you leave little notes for everybody else, you can just go and invade somebody's game. And I have never won an invasion. I get killed every single time, and I lose all my projects, and I lose all my souls, and I get so angry about it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had that happen yet. I don't know if it's because maybe nobody's redoing it, or maybe I have a setting off to do that. But
Maybe.
I mean, I don't exactly want that to happen anytime soon, judging by how you've described it. But
Oh, I hate it.
I just love it. You'll find notes that'll be like, time for dodging, and it's just like, yeah, oh, well, this is already going to be an absolute mess of something to me to go through. There's like this one part in the game where there's like a load of dragons on a hill, and it's like, do not fight. It's just like, I gathered that. I wasn't planning on doing that, if I'm honest.
All the ones in like Dark Souls 1 are just like praise the sun anytime you can see sunlight. Because like for the first half of the game you're in like complete darkness, and then you go to like a new area and it's all sunny, and it's just constantly like praise the sun. I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I will have to give Elden Ring a look at some stage, but I mean, to be honest, there was actually, here's one note that I did find that I found was particularly hilarious, was that when you finish the first boss fight, there's obviously all the notes from pre-boss fight of people giving you tips or whatever. There's one corner that you go over to, and there's just a little line there, and it just says, I want to go home. I just like the idea of knowing that someone has been there cowering in the corner writing out this while they're being absolutely annihilated by this boss. But yeah, let's I suppose every game that's difficult has to have a soundtrack. Well, bar Cuphead, I suppose, that kind of matches that level of intensity, and I suppose Dark Souls does that really, really well. So the next piece we're going to be playing is from Dark Souls 3. God knows I don't know the actual name of the track, but it's one of the many brutal tracks that will see you die on a number of occasions, I imagine. Just remember, this is only for a brief 3-minute period, and then fun music comes back afterwards. So here's a track from Dark Souls 3. What a way to really, I suppose, spend an evening listening to such hopeful music at the end of the night. We've obviously got one more track coming up just to round us all off, but it's been an absolute pleasure. Emma, thank you so much for joining me this
Thanks
week and for
me on.
bringing all your amazing musical knowledge and all this great stuff. And for now, reminding me that you can date a guy called Sam on Stardew Valley, and that there is plenty of fan art out there that should not be seen by any of the human eyes.
Yeah. That's your takeaway from this week, Urgent.
Yeah. To round it up, though, I want to ask: do you think that this show has been good?
I do think this show has been good.
Would you say it was a triumph?
A triumph. Do you know what? I will say that it was from when we walked into the studio an hour and a half ago. I will say this has definitely been a triumph.
Brilliant. Well, that's great, because the next song I'm about to play for you, Still Alive, is all about stuff being a triumph. So let's listen to that while we round out the show. Thank you all for listening this week. If you want to follow us, you can do so over on our socials. I believe it's Stories with No Words on Facebook. Don't ask me what the Twitter is. I'll have that next week. Come back. But it's been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you to everyone who's watching the pre-recorded version and everyone who's listening live. All look forward to hearing again next week. Goodbye.
This was a triumph. I'm making a note here, huge success. It's hard to overstate my satisfaction. Aperture science. We do what we must because we can, for the good of all of us, except the ones who are dead. But there's no sense crying over every mistake. You just keep on trying till you run out of cake, and the science gets done, and you make a neat gun for the people who are still alive. I'm not even angry. I'm being so sincere right now. Even though you broke my heart and killed me, tore me to pieces, and threw every piece into a fire. As they burned, it hurt because I was so happy for you. Now these points of data make a beautiful line. We're out of beta, we're releasing on time. So I'm glad I got burned to think of all the things we've learned for the people who are still alive. Look at me still talking when there's science to do. When I look out there, it makes me glad I'm not you. I've experiments to run, there's research to be done on the people who are still alive. And believe me, I am still alive. And while you're dying, I'll be still alive. I feel fantastic and I'm still alive. And when you're dead, I will be still alive.